This is Peak Productivity, the podcast for Asana lovers and productivity nerds. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Asana limits. Yes, it has some. And we are also going to talk about some new Asana features, as well as the integration with Google, Gmail, Google Calendar. Welcome to Peak Productivity. Hi, Bastien. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's too hot here. It's a heat wave, almost 40 degrees, and
It is for us as well. Yeah.
Can wait for autumn and winter.
And then it's gonna be too cold, and we will complain again.
Yeah, probably. But actually, when I was younger, my favorite season was spring and summer. Probably that's a symptom of getting old. That now I prefer autumn and winter.
Mine are autumn and spring, like in the
Yeah,
middle
it's
between the two extremes.
yeah. Well, whether it's winter, summer, spring, or autumn, there are always things to talk about Asana and productivity. And this
Yes.
week we have several new news about the product releases, and we want to talk also about the boundaries. We are going to explore the limits of Asana, and if it's fine, we will start with some new features that have been released in the past few days. For instance, the subtasks now can appear in the universal workload. This is a topic that we've discussed in this podcast in previous episodes. What are your thoughts about this?
So finally, it's important people realize that workload is actually a twofold feature. You have the workload available within the business plan, which is attached to a portfolio. So you have the limit of 250 projects, and we can start talking about the limits. If you have more than 250 projects in a portfolio, workload doesn't work anymore. And they haven't changed this, which is a bit disappointing. But they released something called Universal Workload, which is an enterprise-only feature. At least for now, I'm not sure it's going to go down anytime soon. Which is accessible not through portfolios, but accessible through reporting, which is actually called Universal Reporting. And when you create a new dashboard, you can also create a new Universal Workload. And there, in that feature, they finally take into account subtasks, just like if they belong to the project, they will be counting as well, which is super exciting, but also super disappointing for anyone that doesn't have the enterprise plan.
Is it optional or
Actually,
it's
good
default?
question. Yeah, let me try and have a look. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, because
Okay, I'm creating a universal workload. You can add people that you want to track. Sorry. I don't see any options. So I think it is included by default.
okay.
Which is a problem if you knew that subtask didn't count, and if you want the sum to be stored in the main task, but you still wanted the breakdown into subtasks, then I think suddenly you double count things. We didn't have the issue yet. We haven't had a client that tried a universal workload. So I'm waiting to have a first client to test this. I had a look myself, and I think that's one of the limitations.
Yeah, definitely it will require some research and testing and playing around a little bit and trying to break some things to make sure that the
Yes.
reporting, this universal reporting, is accurate. Cool. We also have the new goal templates for enterprise users. Do your clients use these goals features?
We use goals. We
We at
use
Volcanic,
goals.
we use goals too, but
Yeah.
I don't have many clients that
No.
use.
Usually, I think there's two ways of starting with goals. Either you do goals right away and then you work on project and tasks. So you start from goals, or you start from the bottom with tasks and project and you work your way up to the goals. If you do that second option, it takes you weeks or months to have the right structure to then introduce goals. We haven't had the case yet. We've had one client working on goals first, but then they had, like, as the CEO was laid off, they had a new CEO come in. It does not, I think it doesn't like the OKR um, strategy that much. He wants to rework some of the work. So we are starting again for Asana from the bottom. So we won't have goals for a while. In our case, we started from the bottom. Because we had Asana for many years and goals were not part of the Asana plan that we had. They just did not exist. So we started to add goals later down the road. And to go back on the feature that you mentioned, it's really a pain to create goals because they usually have the same structure. You have the same people involved, the same privacy, the same time period, and it's just so many clicks to get anything done. I think goal template is definitely something that's interesting.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, definitely. Um, uh, as I said, I don't have any clients that use goals actually. On our case at Volcanic, we had an initial approach setting company goals like
Mm-hmm.
revenue, profit, and all this stuff, but it didn't help to spread the word. So we switched to individual goals. So now everyone on the team has quarter objectives, quarter goals. They have three goals each quarter: one personal, one is a team goal, and the third is what we call a risk goal, where they can uh,
Go
aim to
crazy.
whatever they think. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And I think that this helped to familiarize, and that everyone now checks goals and checks progress, and every week they update their goals and they see how the results roll up to the company quarter goals. I'm 100% sure that this is the approach that I would use if I had a client that says, okay, let's use Asana goals in our organization, because
Let's have the next episode on goals. I'd like to know
yeah.
more about the way you do things. And we've struggled a lot with goals. We forced ourselves to use them to know what to tell the clients, and it has been a complicated journey.
Yeah. Well, on from our experience, when we tried the, let's say, um, top-down approach,
Mhm.
it was like a source of data storage. Like, okay, these are the goals for revenue, or but it didn't empower or give people the sense that they have to interact with this information. Now that everyone is the owner of their own goals, and these goals roll up to a greater objective, it works much better. Definitely.
Okay, cool.
We've spoken about enterprise new features. Let's talk about premium new feature, the Google Calendar integration. This is something that, since I had other use cases, probably doesn't make sense to me or our organization. I don't know if you think about any potential use case that this new Google Calendar integration can make sense.
I think I have a love and hate relationship with the connection between Asana and Google because historically it was very bad. There were, sorry, a lot of problems and issues. So I would usually tell the clients to not even look at the integration because it doesn't take due time into account, because it's not a two-way sync. It's just really hard to use. And for so long, for so many years, we at the company manage things manually. And I'm just so used to do that I don't see any use case for myself, which makes it a bit harder for me to see use case for clients. From what I understand, so you now have the Google Calendar as an action within rules, so you can create an event when something happens in Asana. And once that event is created, it's actually tied to the task, and then you have some kind of a two-way sync. Um, I'm not sure if it takes into account due time. Maybe start time,
Yes,
due time.
yes, it has, and for me, it has a problem. I think it's quite subjective, but it changes the name of the event to the name of the task.
Mm,
So
yeah,
so
you wish you had two different names.
Yeah, because when I'm checking Google Calendar, I have like I use a set of vocabulary. When I use Asana, I have another set of vocabulary, and mixing both, it's a bit confusing. Um, that's why I
And I
said
think, yeah,
I'm
and I
not.
think you don't want to sync everything. You don't want to sync an entire project. You want to pick and choose, and yeah, that's why I'm not completely convinced.
The use case that I thought, we have a project where we store customer meetings, the meeting minutes for
Mhm.
each meeting with our customers. And the use case that I thought is to connect the meeting minutes, the task with the meeting minutes with the event on Google Calendar. So I had uh, both connected, but then it changes the information in the event on the Google Calendar, and usually that event, the client has access to that event, but so it doesn't make much sense. But I'll
Yeah,
probably
and
needs
I
more research.
yeah, and also I think a change on the event, like a date change or hour change, is usually something you have to deal with, and there's usually things you have to do as a result. I don't want my tasks to change dates without me knowing. That's why I don't feel comfortable having that sync between the two, because if a client pushes something by several days, it might actually impact your project, and this is something you have to take into account. And with that two-way sync, you might miss that information. So yeah, not entirely convinced. It's going in the right direction as always, but not completely
Mhm.
sure yet.
Yeah, this is one of these typical cases where this is a solution for a problem that I don't know yet what problem it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's a
exactly.
solution searching for a problem. What I've also realized is that the integration between Gmail and Asana has improved in the past few weeks. They changed a little bit the layout, and maybe it's me, but I think it goes faster when you search for projects or assignees, or mm, it's a small update, but it's good
It's the
to
same thing.
generate tasks.
I have a love and hate relationship with this one, because it's historically it was very slow. So to me, it was
Yeah.
completely unusable. And also it pushed people to not have Asana opened all day, every day. Why would you, why do you need to have something available in different tools if your Asana is opened? And also it pushes people to kind of put an entire email in a task, which is, I think, something that I do not agree with. An email is very noisy, there's a lot of clutter, and you want to clean up and only include what's relevant in Asana. So I think it's not going in the right direction. If it can help people discover Asana, fine, but I don't think it's very productive, and I've never seen anyone proving me that it is. You see what
Uh,
I mean?
Yeah, definitely. For me, there are two approaches where it makes sense. The first one is for people that don't know Asana, that heavy Gmail users. They are super concerned. Like, if I receive an email that it's a task, I have to go to Asana and type the name of the task, the sign, the date, and everything. So showing them that they can link the email and create a task, it's like helpful for them, even though when they are used to Asana, probably they will generate the task manually. And the other approach is for specific use cases. For us, for customer support, it makes sense because you can generate a task, and for that case, it makes sense to attach the whole email conversation, the attachments, everything, and not having.
Isn't it better to forward the email to the right email address and let Asana do everything?
It used to make sense, but we have a customer support project where we track the time between the message is generated, so the issue is
Yep.
created, and when it's solved, and it's faster. The message arrives, then the task is generated with that email attached and all the attachments on the task. and then the clock starts ticking for customer support team to take care of it. It's well,
I think
it's
I
okay.
do.
I don't love it. It's okay.
I think I have a big bias, which is that I click and scroll very, very quickly. So to me, those tools do not save me time. It's quite the opposite because of how slow they are, and nothing is faster. They will never be faster than the Asana app itself because they rely on the API. So to me, I'm just wasting time, and my Asana is always open. I have a very wide screen with two apps next to each other. So I'm not not everyone is in the same situation, obviously, but I have that bias when I try to evaluate features.
Well, makes sense. Yeah. So we said that today we were going to explore the limits of Asana. Bastien, in which situations with what type of clients you found that you were touching those limits, and which of the Asana limits is the most concerning, the one that when you approach a new engagement with a customer you need to discuss?
Yeah, so the what we are mentioning is actually a post that is available on the forum. It's called "List of Technical and Data Limitation in Asana." It was created by Richard. It's being maintained by Richard with the help of everyone. It has been quite amazing to see this. It's really, really up to date. The ID and that list, all the items in that list, they sometimes are not even in the guide, but when they are, they just spread across the entire guide and they are pretty hard to find. It's important to know the limits because sometimes the workflow you're going to create, it works it works well with your test. You have a couple of custom fields, couple of people, of tasks, it just works well. But if you want to scale it, it just doesn't scale. If you want to drop down with a list of your clients, it's a good idea. It's a perfectly fine idea. So when you're going to test the idea, you're going to probably jot down 10 or 20 clients in the list. It works perfectly. But the thing is, you have to realize you only have 500 options in that list. So if you have more than 500 clients, you're going to hit some kind of a limit that might break your workflow. So the kind of limit that we have to keep in mind are, I think, the number of options in a drop down 500, the number of fields in a project, 100 fields in a project, the number of fields on a single task, because when a task is multi-homed, it gets fields from all the project, and there's a limit to that. Also, the number of rules you can have, the number of triggers, the number of actions you can have on the rule. What else? The number of tasks you can export from a project or from a search. For example, when you export from a project, I think you have 140K rows you can export, which is usually quite enough. But if you export a search, it's only 2,000, which is very low. So if you really want to export something and save it or treat that on the side in Power BI or something else, it just doesn't work. That use case doesn't work. So you need to know those limits. We obviously have the limit of 500 projects in a portfolio. This is the one you have on the screen. But if you go beyond 250, you don't have a timeline anymore. You don't have the workload anymore. Stuff will not work. And one of the biggest I realized a couple of days ago, I don't know if you know this one, how many tasks could be displayed maximum on a read-only view? Do you have the answer to this?
No, I didn't
200.
had.
200. That's very, very low.
Yeah.
So if you have a list with 300 tasks, they will not be seen on a read-only view that you share. That's a massive problem because you could spend hours in workshops designing the perfect system with read-only views, but it doesn't work. And you're going to waste hours of work just by not knowing those limits. So in that case, that's the one that really surprised me. The others, I think we are quite we have the habit of knowing them and checking them, but that one was quite big. Also, 10 project maximum connected to a goal. That's a very low number. Having a goal connected to more than 10 project, I think, is could be quite common. So it's a big problem.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I wasn't aware that there were so many constraints. Probably I don't have any use case that has hit these limits.
We had
Probably
a
this
case the other day. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
the read only is yeah, quite concerning because
It's a
200
big one.
tasks,
Yeah.
a medium-sized project has more than 200 tasks.
Yeah. We had a case the other day. Someone had a drop down, I think, for the project manager or the employee. And based on whoever you selected, that task should go in the project that the person is responsible for. On paper, that's easy. You have a rule. If the option is Richard, move the task to Richard. If it's David, David, etc., etc. Problem is, you have 50 rules per project. So even if you have time and you can spend an entire day creating rules, you're only going to cover 50 people. If you want to cover 100 people, you need to have two projects and things have to be multi-home between the two. But in that case, the person had, I think they needed 400 rules, something like this. It's just not manageable. It doesn't work. You need to find a different solution.
What's the different solution? Coding, API?
Um, the different solution was to go one of the solutions was to go through bundles to not have to recreate those rules several times. And I think the other solution is to use use the API or just convince the client that this setup doesn't work and they need to find a different way of doing things. And sometimes I've had the case with a client recently. The project manager wanted to create rules for each person, but if you return the problem, you could have each person set up a rule in their My Tasks. That's usually easier. So if they get assigned on something that also has a specific custom field, then something happens and you ask them to create a rule in their My Task. So you don't hit that limit of 50 rules because each person will have that rule in their own My Task. It's a lot of work to get them to do this, but it does help you go beyond the limit.
Well, this is an extra reason why medium and big companies need the chief Asana manager
Yes,
to handle all
exactly.
these rules. And one limit that surprises me is that even though you can upload 100 megabytes, 100 megabytes file, the form attachment field limits this to 25.
The forum.
Yeah. So if you want to add an attachment to a form,
Oh, foam. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
the limit is 25 when the limit per attachment is 100
Yeah,
megabytes.
it's one of those things. There's probably a good technical reason, probably linked to the different data servers that they use to store the info. I don't have the reason exactly, but yeah, that sometimes you just don't understand why there's a limit. They do need a limit because otherwise you're going to have performance issue. For example, workload only looking at 250 projects. There's probably a reason behind this in terms of performance and resources. So there has to be a limit in most cases, but you don't always know why. And sometimes it's just that maybe people forgot and nobody asked to have that limit pushed to a higher number.
And I haven't seen any of these limits linked to the pricing, the type of license.
Yeah,
So
that's
these
right. I
are,
think I think most of those are just technical, and I think you're right. I think none of the plan unlock a different tech limit like the ones we described, which is
yeah, I
better
guess
for us.
that,
It makes it easier.
yeah, yeah. And the fact that Asana doesn't offer the on-premise option, that it's always cloud
Hmm.
based. Yeah. Well, definitely, and I think that this will be a good advice for any Asana consultants that listen, because they should listen to peak productivity. That when having these first conversations about the Asana setup of a client, to check all these limits before designing how the template rules projects should look like. Yeah, I've
Definitely, and
seen
that's
also
that's
that.
why that's why our work is important, because we have the experience of scaling workflows, so we can help the client avoid scaling problems.
Yeah, I see that some of these limits have been removed, or with new features that
Increased, yeah.
yeah, the reordering, the multi filtering, um, this
Yeah, and
type of
also
limits.
the number of options in a drop down, I think it went from 100 to 200 to 500. So this is definitely going in the right direction for some of those. And again, it's important to raise your need on the forum, to go through your consultant or your AE or CSM to have them raise a voice of customer every time you want to change those limits.
Yeah, we will add the link to this post on the description of this episode, and if you check that post, there are options to vote for some new features, or removing or upgrading some of these limits. So make sure that you vote for those that are required. As you said, Richard, thanks Richard from Peak Productivity, has totally updated the post, which
I'm
is
jealous.
great.
I wished I was the one creating that post. I never thought it would. I never had this idea. So I'm quite jealous.
Well, we are super grateful for having people like Richard or yourself taking care of the community, and providing this super insightful information that helps
Yeah,
other
ideally,
consultants.
ideally that would come from Asana, but I think I know they do have that list internally, at least a partial list that I was able to get my hands on. But we can't expect them to share this kind of stuff. I think it's it's um, it's just too transparent sometimes.
Well,
We have to
and
do that ourselves.
it's yeah, yeah, definitely. This is some shared information that on the battlefield, that it's where consultants have to deal every day with clients and projects and rules. It's great to share this information, so we avoid, because if you, sometimes if you have to prepare a workaround when you have a structure super big with a project with many fields, well, as you said, the workaround might take days or weeks to have it ready.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Well, anything else you want to talk? Any new feature that we are expecting in the next
Um,
weeks,
y- yeah, maybe
months?
we can do some teasing. It's not public yet, so I won't share some details, but there's a new feature around emojis that's coming. I don't know if you've seen on the forum. I was lucky enough to be the one to share that with the ambassadors, and it's going to be released at the end of the month to everyone. It's a small feature related to emojis, so stay tuned. You're going to learn more soon.
Yeah, this is a hint that I learned from you, that it's adding emojis to section names or task names or project names, that visually helps to sort information, or to find something that it's important. Even though you always mention that having Asana with too many colors, it's not good, like 10
Yeah,
different types
you,
of priority or this, it's not good,
yeah.
but having these emoji things helps a lot.
They're usually more discrete than an entire color attached to a custom field option. Usually the emoji is more discrete, more subtle, more fun as well. Allows you to have more contrast, and yeah, I love them. I use them quite a lot, maybe too much sometimes, but an Asana account without any emoji, just really sad. Sometimes I tell the client, your project is super sad. It's like black and white. There's nothing. It's how can you work in this all day, every day? You have to make it more fun and colorful to use.
Yeah, that's the difference sometimes between working with Asana or with an Excel spreadsheet. Having some color and some emojis makes it more visual. Um, I also heard some rumors about a potential feature that usually when you engage with PPMs or PMOs in a corporation, they ask for Gantt charts where they can have like the baseline of the project and see if the project goes overdue or has some problems with due dates. Hopefully, we will learn more about this potential feature and maybe we will have it before
Yeah,
the end of the year.
it's funny because a month ago we were on a private webinar and we've seen a picture showing the new tabs you have, like the tabs you can customize. And one of that tab, it was very small, and my partner actually spotted this. One of that tab was called Gantt, and it was next to timeline. And we knew that something was happening because for Asana it's too hard to compartmentalize stuff. So some people work on things and it just gets mixed up, and you have that Gantt stuff appearing on another feature. So we knew it was coming, and I'm not sure what we can say, but this is definitely a coming.
Well, we will keep pressing F5 in our browsers to check if there are some new features on Asana, and obviously we will share them with our audience here at Peak Productivity. Uh, Bastien,
Today,
we
yeah,
reached
today
the end.
I got access to a new one. I got access to the revamped portfolio design, which
Whoa!
is a new list. Everything is smaller. The rows are smaller. The status doesn't display the same way. You have the time since the last status update was made. It's super, super nice. You'll see. It's going to come soon.
I definitely look forward to this because portfolios, as projects grow, are more difficult to track with the default old view. So I'm sure that this new layout will help to find insightful information in our portfolios. Again, Bastien, thank you. Another week talking about Asana and productivity. Looking forward to speak next week, hopefully with more news, more features. Have a nice week. Thank you very much.
See you next week. Bye.
See you.